Today we're going to look at something called synthetic division. We're going to start with a warm-up. Solve and graph on a number line. X squared minus 7x is less than 8. So now this is a parabola, a quadratic, and we have to figure out what numbers would work so that x squared minus 7 would be less than 8. First step is we would want to get 0 on one side. So let's do that. Let's subtract the 8. So I'll subtract 8 from each side. X squared minus 7x minus 8 is less than 0. We would want to see what would make this inequality true. The next step is we would want to solve just this side of the inequality, and there's a few methods that you already know from last chapter. Number 1 is we could use quadratic formula. Number 2, we could try factoring. You could graph it. Let's do factoring. Let's use a box and circle as a factor. So with our box and circle, we have our x squared minus 7x minus 8. So we want two numbers that multiply to negative 8x squared. We get that by multiplying the first and the last term. And add to the middle circle, negative 7x. Well, two numbers that multiply to negative 8 that add to negative 7 would be negative 8x and 1x. So you put those in the box in the corners in either order. And let's fill out the outside of the box. What multiplies to x squared? X and x. X times negative 8 is negative 8x. X times 1 is 1x. So there's the first part. We factored it. And we want to know what makes each of those 0. So x minus 8, x plus 1, we want to figure out what makes those 0. We'll use zero product property. So we know x equals 8 would make this 0, and x equals negative 1 would make this one 0. So on a number line, let's grab our arrows here. We know that the numbers here would be either between negative 1 and 8 or on the outside of them. So let's look at the inequality sign. If it's less than, we know it has to be an open circle, so it's either above or below. And then we have to figure out, do we shade in the middle or do we shade on the outside? So to do that, you pick a point in between here and test. And so 0 is in between here. 0 is right here. Let's test 0 and see if it works in the inequality. So 0 squared minus 7 times 0, is that less than 8? And it is. 0 is less than 8. So we're going to shade where 0 is, and that is between. So maybe I should shade this way. Between the lines. So any point between negative 1 and 8 would work in the inequality. All right, let's get to today's lesson. We're going to start with the question was synthetic turf. So synthetic turf is artificial turf. So it is turf, but it's another way of doing it. And that is what synthetic division is. It is long division, what we did yesterday, but another way of doing it. In this case, a faster way to get the same thing as you would if you would use long division. You can use it to see if something is a factor of a polynomial by showing there's no remainder. And you can use it to write a polynomial in factored form. So that is why we do synthetic division. It's faster. You can see if it's a factor. You can use it to write the factored form of a polynomial. Here are the steps, and we'll keep referring back to this to do our problem here. So the first step is the number on the outside is the 0, the opposite of the factor, and the coefficients go on the inside of the box, and it's kind of a half box here. So example 1, check to see if x plus 2 is a factor by dividing. If it is a factor, rewrite in factored form.
Please call 6123. Kristen Warren, please call 6123.
So we look at x plus 2, that's the factor. We need the 0. What would make the 0? Negative 2. So we're going to put a negative 2 on the outside of our half box right here. We're going to write the coefficients of the polynomial in standard form right here, so it has to be from the highest power of x down. So we have a 3, x cubed, an 8, x squared, a 5x, and a 2. So write the coefficients. Okay, so we're done with this one. Next step, carry down the first number in the upside down box. Sorry, the first coefficient. So here's my upside down box. We're going to carry this down, write the 3. Okay, so now we're done with this step. Next step, multiply the number on the outside by the number on the bottom and place that number under the second coefficient. So we're going to multiply negative 2 times 3, and we're going to write it right here. So negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Next step is add the terms. So 8 minus 6 is 2. Then we're going to repeat the steps for 3 and 4 for the next coefficient. So we're going to multiply negative 2 times 2, which is negative 4, put it here, and add. We'll get a 1. Then we're going to put it here, we're going to multiply negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, and we're going to add, and we get 0. If there is no remainder, which means there's a 0 here, you're going to rewrite it in factored form. So since there's no remainder, x plus 2 is a factor, which means we can divide this thing by x plus 2. Now, if we divide this by x plus 2, think about dividing every term by an x. Each term would drop down an x, so x cubed would turn into an x squared because we're pulling out the x. In other words, if we were to distribute this, we would get the top. So we do need to drop this down a power of x. Here are the coefficients. We're going to write 3x squared, so you drop it down a coefficient, plus 2x plus 1. If you were to use a box to multiply this out or to FOIL it, you should get the top polynomial right here. These two are factors of the polynomial. They multiply to the top right there. All right, we're going to try this, excuse me, a few more times. Divide this polynomial by x plus 2 if there's no remainder, right in factored form. So first step, find the 0. So x plus 2 is the factor, the 0 is 2. Make your upside down box. This is not in standard form. Let's put it in standard form. 5x cubed. There's no x squared, so plus 0x squared minus 6x plus 8. Now it's in standard form. Write the coefficients. 5, 0, negative 6, and 8. First step, carry down the 5 and rewrite. Next step, multiply 2 times 5, which is 10. Rewrite here. Add them together, we get 10. Next step, multiply. 2 times 10 is 20. Add them together. Excuse me. Oh, and I made a mistake here. This plus 2, the 0 of this is not plus 2, it's negative 2. So that changes a few things. So here, the 5 is right, but this should be a negative 10. This should be a negative 10. This will be a negative, will this be a negative? This will be a positive 20, positive 20. So this should be a 14. We're going to multiply, and we'll get negative 28 here. So this will be a negative 20. So we would say x plus 2 is not a factor of this, although we could rewrite it like this. X plus 2, it would be a 5x squared, we drop it down a power, minus 10x plus 14, but there's a remainder, 20, minus 20 left over x plus 2. So remainder is what we're dividing, negative 20 left out of x plus 2. So just not a factor. All right, let's do a few that maybe are factors. So example 3, show that x minus 2 and x plus 3 are factors of this polynomial. If they are, rewrite in factored form. So we're going to break this into 2 problems. Let's do x minus 2 first. So if it's x minus 2, remember the 0 should be what makes this 0, so it should be a 2 on the outside. We'll rewrite the coefficients, and here they are in order. 2, 7, negative 4, negative 27, negative 18. First step, carry down the 2. Second step, multiply and add. So 2 times 2 is 4. We get 11. 2 times 11 is 22. We add, we get 18. 2 times 18 is 36. Negative 27 plus 36 is 9. 2 times 9 is 18. And here we get a remainder of 0. So x minus 2 is a factor. And we can rewrite the two factors as 2x to the third power, drop it down a power, plus 11x squared plus 18x plus 9. So here's a factored form of this polynomial right here. Let's try another problem. Let's do x plus 3. Is x plus 3 a factor? What makes x plus 3 0? So the 0 is negative 3. Again, write our coefficients here. 2, 7, negative 4, negative 27, negative 18. First step, carry down the 2. Multiply. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Add. We'll get 1. We'll get negative 3, negative 7. Multiply negative 3 times negative 7. We get 21. Negative 27 plus 21 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative 6 is 18. Again, you have shown that this is a factor. We can write x plus 3 times 2x to the third plus x squared minus 7x minus 6. And this is another way to write the factored form of this polynomial right here. Let's try a few more examples here. Is negative 1 a 0 of x squared minus 5x minus 6? So already we have the 0, so we're going to put that on the outside. We have our coefficients 1, negative 5, negative 6. Carry down the 1, multiply, we get negative 1. This will be negative 6, this will be 6. Yes, it is a factor. We would say yes, we could write it in factored form. X plus 1 is the factor, and this would be times x minus 6. If you were to multiply those together, you would get x squared minus 5x minus 6. So we say yes, it's a factor. Yes, negative 1 is a 0, I should say. And then here are the factors. Last example, and then you'll try this method of synthetic division on your own, and we will practice using this on higher degree polynomials tomorrow. Oops, I don't want that. I want to take a screenshot. Okay, so last one is negative 3 a 0 of this polynomial right here. Again, they give you the 0, so that's what we're going to stick on the outside. We have 5, 18, 7, negative 6. Carry down the 5. We'll multiply. We'll get negative 15. That'll be a 3. This will be a negative 9, negative 2. This will be a 6. Yes, it is a 0, so we would say yes. Negative 3 is a 0. And then we can write the factored form of this. It would be x plus 3 times 5x squared plus 3x minus 2. And if you multiply those together, you would get the polynomial you started with. So try the synthetic division method on your assignment, and we're going to apply this tomorrow.